Musk. Call 800-245-8919 for a free consultation.
We are still following the turmoil at the Department of Justice after the acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York resigned rather than drop corruption charges against New York's Democratic Mayor Eric Adams. The Justice Department ordered that those charges be dropped on Monday. Other prosecutors in the department's public corruption unit also quit. Charlie Sykes, MSNBC columnist and political analyst, joins me now. Charlie, there's so much I want to talk about, but I do want to talk about this attorney, Danielle Sassoon, first. She has alleged that Adams' lawyers basically wanted a quid pro quo. You drop the charges, he plays ball on the federal plan on immigration. What is your take on all of this? Of course, Adams' lawyers deny this.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the heart of this entire controversy, this Thursday night massacre, which is that when they ordered that the charges be dropped, when Trump's lawyers ordered that the charges be dropped, they essentially said it's for naked political reasons, that we have not examined the legal basis of charges. We are not suggesting that they be removed because there was not enough evidence. So I think it was the cynical politicization of it that I think triggered everything that you're seeing right now.
All right, well, then let's talk about other things happening within the DOJ, right? The pushback to the Trump agenda was coming. The one place we're seeing it, nowhere in Congress, nowhere from any Republicans except maybe a little Mitch McConnell. But today, 14 states sued Elon Musk and Donald Trump, saying that what DOJ is up to, the authority they think they have, is just unconstitutional. How do you think this is going to go? Because even if the courts keep making these arguments, it sure seems like Trump and Elon are going to just keep on trucking.
Yeah, they are, and we're entering this phase now where we're finding out whether there are any guardrails at all left. I mean, clearly, the Republican Party is not going to push back in any way. The Congress is no longer providing any sort of a check on Donald on what Trump and Musk are doing. So the question is, what will the Department of Justice and what will the federal courts do?
I want to stop right there and weigh in on what you're talking about here just a little bit. I think what the general public don't realize is that if you hand somebody enough rope, eventually they'll hang themselves. And that's basically what the system has done in response towards not just the broken system, but the people in general that has allowed for this to become in power, that mandated Trump to become president. What they basically done was hand the keys to them in giving them now legal authority. They already had authority dealing with people like Musk, because people like Musk can basically blackmail this country. And the reason why I say that, and I hope that he don't do that, is because if he can shut off a certain satellite in space that would prevent from the Ukrainians, whenever the war first started out, if he could press a certain button to cut off a certain satellite to where they no longer can communicate with one another, don't you think that he can do the same thing to us, regardless whether it be over here in this department or over here in this department, or just basically shut off the main thing? Because now we have become so dependent upon digital data. I don't know, to be quite honest with you, I think it would throw this country off into such chaos. It would automatically, it would be devastating in people's lives. It could actually start a civil war in whatever country, providing that something like that happened. Or let's look at it from a different direction. Let's say that somebody knowed what satellite that was up there, that had this ability, and let's say they deliberately sabotaged that satellite or destroyed that satellite. because we know that these satellites have capability of laser fire and to be able to do things up in space. Just like whenever they took that rocket or whatever it was and basically diverted that, I think it wasn't a meteor, I think it was a comet. But anyways, they diverted that comet from hitting a certain particular area with their own personal devices. What I'm getting at is that the inhabitants down here on the planet Earth don't realize how much power that now has been handed to these people towards handing them the keys to our lives. That's the reason why whenever all this first took place, whenever Donald Trump got in power, I put out a memo that these are the people that's in charge of our lives. There was like about maybe 10 of them. Maybe not even 10 of them. But these are basically the people that are in charge of our lives. In other words, if things don't go according to plan, they at any given time can upset the apple cart. So far, we're not seeing that. So far, I believe that Trump is actually going in and he's chiseling away over here. He's chiseling away over here. He's chiseling away over here. Different things that need to be chiseled out. And I think it's a good thing to do that. Is it going to cause a ripple effect? Absolutely. What is the ripple effect going to be? I don't know. That's the part that I keep telling people that I hope that it don't backfire on us. Regardless whether you piss off another country or you stop proceedings of food coming over here from a different country, or maybe it's medicine, or maybe it's tires, or maybe it's whatever, that could cause a great deal of hardship to fall upon to the American people. The American people, for the past, ever since the atom bomb went off, pertaining to ending World War II, for some strange reason, the American people thinks, and not everybody thinks this, but a great deal of people thinks that we're invincible. We are invincible. Thing about it is, if you get to looking at all these other different countries pertaining to their technology and how that they have advanced with their state-of-the-art road system and train system and architectural systems, a lot of these countries are so further advanced than us that it ain't even funny. We used to have a tool called a nuclear bomb that we could use as a leverage to strong arm other countries in doing and acting appropriately. Well, I think various politicians pretty well cut that out towards us being able to do that, especially whenever you started letting the secret out, and now all these other countries has just as many nuclear bombs as you do. So you may as well get ready to cut that out, because all you're going to do is cut your own throat if you go to throwing nuclear bombs at different countries. But let's go back to the technology. Let's go back to the digital world that we are now living in, that we have become accustomed to just within the past 50 or 60 years. More so today than ever before. We see how displeasant that it is to a young child, or even a teenager, or even a grown-up, that if you walk up to them and grab their phone and tell them that they're no longer going to be hooked up to social media, their whole life basically changes. It would have been just as devastating in that person's life if their apartment burnt, or their house burnt, or they was involved in a major accident and they no longer had an automobile to drive. In some cases, in some people's lives, they probably would look upon it towards it being worse, because now they're not hooked up to social media. They can't They don't know what's going on, and they can't voice their opinions about what they think and what they don't think. Kind of like me right now, making this video, this digital video that I'm making towards streamlining. I think it's essential for this American government, either federal, state, or local, to realize just exactly where we are right now in the concept of can and could be blackmailed by our own people. Which leads me to the final thought. Whenever my brother and I, David and I, first got involved in a rigmarole that was going on out here, we know that our hands was tied and we wasn't going to be able to do nothing like they was proposing for us to do, because if we'd done that, we'd be basically shooting ourselves in the foot by doing so. So we led to the most obvious thing, which was what? Go to the law, try to straighten it out that way. Well, once the law themselves wasn't doing appropriate, then we hired an attorney. Name is Younger, up here in Martin. Whenever you hire an attorney, my brother and I, and we're waiting to go to court, and the attorney comes in and looks at you because we make suggestions to the attorney, and he looks back at us and says, well, that don't matter. They've already done made up their mind towards what they're going to do anyway. And he walked away, and my brother and I looked at one another and said, well, what did we hire him for? If he already knows the end results pertaining to what the judge either is or isn't going to do before we get in there and have the case heard, why did we even hire this guy? What you're seeing is, I'm going to try to think of a good equation to where you can kind of halfway understand it. You know, whenever you pull a fish out of the water, what does a fish do? It flops. It flops and it flops and it flops until finally there's no living cells to allow for that fish to flop anymore. And at that point in time, the maggots start eating it and the flies are attracted to it, right? It's dead. It's basically the same way with any animal or any person, that if they go through an extreme, harsh event, let's use an accident or a heart attack or whatever, in exchange of that, ordinarily, there's going to be movement either with the blood vessels or maybe even shaking of the arms or shaking of the legs or something that is going to indicate that the body is going through a state of shock, and because of it, it's on its way out. It's on its way out. That's basically what we're seeing right here with all these ripple effects that's occurring, regardless whether it's this agency or that agency or this agency. And it never should have gotten to the point that it is right now because of that in which what occurred during the Reagan and the Bush's administration that set this country in the wrong direction towards not only of it not taking care of its people properly, but allowing for certain people in the country, and some of them was our own people, to take advantage of the system, or better than that, this government taking care of other countries more so than they're taking care of our own people. I knew that it was a tangled web. I knew it was. I just didn't realize how tangled that the web was. Whenever they talk about draining the swamp, I knew that the swamp was going to be intense. I just didn't know how intense that the swamp's going to, that it's going to take to drain the swamp. Because that green algae that's in that swamp, that's the stuff that you got to get out of the swamp if you're going to clean the swamp, per se. And you can't just clean one side of it. You got to clean all of it and then bring in fresh water. That way it'll start all over again. Well, what we're seeing is the afterbirth or the afterlife of something that's on its way out, that's dying, kind of like that fish flopping. And as it's flopping, you're seeing the repercussions of it.
This week began with Vice President Vance suggesting that this administration may simply ignore the court orders. Look.
Sorry about that. I'm having a fuse problem with my breakers because it has gotten cold and I've gotten one or the other on too high, so I'm going to have to turn one of them down a little bit. And I guess the whole unit turned off. Sorry about that. Anyways, it never should have gotten to the point that it is right now, regardless whether it was with the people that come after the Reagans, which was the Bushes. And of course that was a direct effect towards 9/11. And then we had the Clintons, and then we had the Obamas.
Take an 8-year-long break as a nation.
And I could go on and on and on about how.
So there's that. I should talk.
How inadequate that our government has become for the past 30 plus years. It's unbelievable in what we're seeing and how it is developing. But I still say what the American people and the media, especially the media, don't realize is that they are automatically dealing with TNT. Something that could blow up in their faces real quick. Like I said, I made mention whenever Elon Musk done what he done, that if he was to wind up in Ukraine and then find out that he done that intentionally, that under the War Crimes Act, they could actually hold him accountable for treason in that country. And because of it, they could have a military court if they had him in custody. And what they done from that moment on would be, I guess, their own business. Whenever you're dealing with human beings' lives, it doesn't matter if it's Twitter, Facebook. It doesn't matter if it's Google or Sierra or whoever. Whenever you're dealing with human beings' lives, you're dealing with TNT. Now, the TNT that those social media platforms has is a whole lot bigger, metaphorically speaking, a piece of dynamite than what each individual is down here on the planet, because we're not in control of no satellite. We're not in control of social media. But what they don't realize is that if enough of us was to go up against the bigger pieces of dynamite all at once, it could also affect their lives. So what we're dealing with here is a recipe that could actually blow up, metaphorically speaking, and backfire on every human being on the planet. Not just the American people, but every human being on the planet. Why this is occurring, I understand, because the monetary numbers don't match regarding the fuzzy math that even young Bush talked about. Thing about it is, whenever you go to dismantling people's lives this way, regardless whether it's a federal agency, regardless whether it's a state agency, regardless whether it's a school, regardless whether it's food or whatever, you're pissing a bunch of people off. You're pissing a whole lot of people off. And the thing about the currency, our American currency, in a way, it's kind of been hokey pokey ever since that they decided to no longer back our American currency with gold bullion to begin with. In other words, it has been fuzzy math. And the more graffiti money that we make, the more that it enchants. It's enchanting to the rest of the society. There has to be a different way of doing this. I realize that certain things need to be cleaned out, certain things need to be reformed, certain things probably need to be abolished pertaining to certain government agencies. But once more, whenever you start doing that, you're opening up yourself for a brand new venue of any and all the above. That could lead to not just a monetary war, but could actually lead to an actual war. And I'm not talking about a digital war, per se, towards somebody pulling the plug, which that can always happen, or somebody blowing up some sort of a, what they call it, a MT, whatever, above the universe, that would basically fizzle out all our electronics down here on the planet anyway, over here on this side of the earth. I'm talking about a literal war. Whenever you start starving people and kicking them out and telling them that their lives is no longer worth saving, you're going to have a ripple effect that's going to be dangerous in levels like we've never ever encountered or could believe. I still say that it can be handled in a different way. I realize that certain things need to be swept out. I just hope and pray that the people that we have put in power in all these different areas, that they're and I'm still under the presumption that they're doing it for the better good, that they'll continue to stay on the right side of history pertaining to the better good. But I'm telling you right now, this could turn in a flip of a hat, just like walking up and flipping a switch of whether or not the lights is on or the lights is off. That is how crucial that we are towards falling over the edge and everything becoming chaotic. And whenever I say chaotic, I'm talking about anarchy. I'm talking about being thrown back off into the dark ages. I'm talking about war, civil unrest.
I should tell you, tomorrow we're expecting a fairly large-scale protest starting at 8 a.m. Eastern at the headquarters of the Health and Human Services Department in Washington as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. starts his first full day on the job.
I'm really surprised that he got that, because the qualifications that he has to outrank other people that was more qualified was probably 1,000 to 1. So the reason why that he got that job was from a political stance and not a professional one. And I think just about anybody would tell you that, even those that voted for him to get that job, in which I'm not saying that he's not qualified to do something. But, you know, that's one of the lead factors that Elon Musk puts forth to the American people, kind of like the airplane directors at these airplane hangars that operates towards allowing airplanes to come in and go out. That was one of their big kickers, him and Trump, that you have unqualified people that's trying to do a job that requires more qualified people. Right? That's what they said, right? Which I agree, because the stakes are like 1,000 times higher whenever you're dealing with human beings' lives. 300, 400, 500 people coming in or leaving, and being fluctuated in aviation that could cause a major disaster. Well, how come it ain't that way in everything? Especially human health. Especially whenever we've just recently gone through what we've gone through. And a lot of us has either lost friends, loved ones, close loved ones, or we know somebody that lost somebody pertaining to COVID. How come we do not expect the best of the best, regardless whether it be in one area or the other? I mean, we expect the best of the best pertaining to airplane control people in these towers. We expect the best, right? Well, how come we don't expect the best pertaining to making rational decisions about our own personal health. There's a conflict of interest there, I believe, pertaining to Mr. Kennedy and his qualifications. Now, that's my personal opinion, and that didn't cost you nothing. Just like my personal opinion about who's in charge of the big satellites towards being able to flip the switches on or flip the switches off, we are touching base in areas right now that could be devastating for humanity up on the planet. That's how dangerous that all this has become. You talk about a high gamble, a high stake game, you don't get no higher than this. We're in the 21st century, the year 2025, and I don't think, because of all the gizmos and gadgets and because of everything out there that can be devastating in so many people's lives, I don't think that we've ever reached a moment in time of being on the threshold of being thrown off into the abyss as we are right now. And if we don't get a hold of ourselves, and I've said this all along, that's exactly what our enemy is sitting back and desiring. They're desiring for us to fall apart over here to the degree that a civil war does break out. Civil unrest does break out. And once we start massacring ourselves on that level, and we become so weakened that we basically have given all that we have to be able to either take, steal, defend, whatever word you may want to use during this chaotic moment, after we become so weakened, that's whenever the true enemy that is sitting and lying in wait, regardless whether they be over in the Middle East, regardless whether it be China, regardless whether it be another country, he's just going to come over here and take us over. At that point in time, you're looking at the American flag, the red, white, and blue flag, dropping to the ground and raising a brand new regime under different orders, under a different constitution, under a different group of people. That's how close we are to total devastation. And I'm still convinced that there are certain people out there that is their desire. That way, they will not have to be accountable to the people that put these people in these places that has basically led us down this endless road of doom and gloom. They would rather see the world come to an apocalyptic, catastrophic event than they would to give full account to the American people towards why did they let this happen, why did they, what was their intentions, and how come they done what they done, and asking them all the questions about the who, the what, the when, and the where. This is becoming spooky, my friends. It's becoming spooky on every perspective. A historian, analyst, a military analyst, and any other type of analyst, this is becoming very, very, in other words, we're walking on thin ice. And to me, it looks like the ice could be getting thinner. I hope that there's a breakthrough. But I've said all along that if you're not willing to do this in the proper form, as far as a true Holy Ghost leadership anointing pertaining to God, giving us the ability to know what to do, how to do, where to do, when to do, etc., well, then you're still going at this blindsided, and because of it, it could be just as much in our favor as it is not in our favor. And I'm saying that respectfully on both sides, and that was one of the main reasons why that I made a conscious choice this year, or this past last year, of not participating in this election, because it was so crucial that it could sway just as quickly in the to the far right as it did the far left, and it being devastating either way, that I chose not to participate. Because it never should have gotten this far out of hand. $36 trillion in debt, all the drugs, all the illegals. Now we're seeing the corruption from within the courts pertaining to the system actually being corrupted. Just like me and my brother hiring an attorney and him giving his opinion about, well, it don't matter what you want or what you think. They've already made up their minds of what they're going to do before we ever get up there and talk to them. And my brother and I looked at each other and said, well, why did we hand this guy the money for? If he already knows what the end results is going to be. And in so many different perspectives, our judicial system has turned out to be just exactly that, based upon who you are, how much money you have, who you know, what you know. These are all blackmail tactics. And we can be blackmailed very quickly. I mean, it ain't nothing unusual. I'll use New Orleans for an example. For the past 2 or 3 years, they've been hacked because they haven't been on top of their system in making sure that they put in breakers and fire breakers and all this other stuff to keep people from coming in and shutting their system down and basically ruining their system. Well, it's easier to give in to the hackers and say, well, how much money do you want? And they'll keep it within an adjustable rate to where they know that it's better to pay off the blackmailers than it is to take a chance on everything being fried and you having to go in and replace every system that city is attached to. That could happen not only on a city scale, but that could happen on a nation scale. And whenever you go to doing stuff like that, you're basically playing God over the American people's heads and over the world's heads. And whenever you start doing stuff like that, you're going to start irritating a whole lot of people.
Keep an eye on that in tomorrow's headlines. Today, there were disruptive protests at the confirmation hearing for Trump's education secretary nominee, Linda McMahon. She does not have much of a background in education. She did run a pro wrestling company. Protesters at her confirmation hearing today used wrestling slogans to interrupt her testimony and shout about the Trump administration's evident plans to get rid of the whole Department of Education. Under sharp questioning from Democratic senators today, Linda McMahon said at one point that she did not know if it should be legal or if it is legal, in her view, for a school in America to offer a class on Black history.
See, they're attacking that. How about Native American history? Whenever I was growing up in just grammar school, they taught very little about the Native American people and how that they was abolished and how that they was genocide and how that certain things occurred pertaining to the Europeans toward trying to hide the truth. You can still find the truth, but you got to go to the public libraries. You got to really seek it out towards finding out the truth about what happened to the Native American people over here in America. And I think the reason why that they've done that is because it's so grotesque. It's actually so distasteful, shameful, is the reason why that they chose not to make that part of our curriculum in what we are being taught in our history. And there's so many other areas that our government officials wanted to keep their own citizens blinded by. Blinded.
She said today at her confirmation hearing that she was, quote, not quite certain whether teaching a Black history class or taking a Black history class might be illegal now in her eyes. Today at a school in Belgium, that the U.S. military operates for families of U.S. service members serving abroad. The New York Times reports that teachers scrambled to remove, quote, Harriet Tubman posters, origami paper cranes, and depictions of rainbows in the classroom. That was ahead of an expected visit from the wife of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who was traveling with her husband on his thus far disastrous first trip abroad in his new job as the head of the Pentagon. According to the Times tonight, quote, teachers were worried that the poster, the origami cranes, and the rainbows would be seen as signs of Black, Japanese, or gay culture.
I'm going to leave it at that. Good luck to all of us. You see the ripple effects that I'm talking about? Whenever the Obama administration done what they done pertaining to the Supreme Court, they have no idea in how that they have contaminated the world and contaminated our great nation. And that's just one area. That's just one area of corruption. Sin. Wickedness. God bless America. God bless our troops. God bless our endeavors. Shalom.